Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And today, well, I haven't been over here in probably like almost 2 weeks, so I'm trying to get back into regularly filming over here again. And so I thought that we would start this month off with some meditations. Now, if you didn't watch, I think it was my last video where I announced that I was going to be doing this Ask Peter situation, where you guys can either leave questions for me in the comment section below, or direct message me, or email me and ask me to respond based on life experience, not expert opinion or anything like that, just based on life experience, to answer questions about grief or relationships or, you know, things I've gone through in my life. And then I'll just share personal experiences of what I've gone through and what I've learned based on that. So it'd be kind of like, you know, back in the day, my mom used to read, what was it, like Dear Abby or whatever. So it'd be like, not Hints for Heloise, but like Dear Abby. Well, she read Hints for Heloise too. Do you guys remember those? If you don't remember those, Dear Abby was like somebody would write in about something that was going on, you know, with like a friendship or a relationship or something like that, or their children or whatever. Oh, there was Miss Manners too. I forgot about that you would like Miss Manners. Oh, and the millionaire guy. So then Hints for Heloise was like, somebody would ask, did they ask a question or did she just post like, you know, like, this is a little trick for a recipe, add like a dollop of mayonnaise and it'll change your banana bread forever or something like that. Don't do that because I don't know how to cook banana bread. But then there was, do you remember all those columns back in the day? And then there was Miss Manners that always like said, you know, like where the forks go and all that kind of stuff. But then there was also the millionaire guy. I think he was only like once a week he was in there. Remember that? Like, and he had like, I don't know who he was. I should do a whole video about that on my drama channel. I think I'm going to do that. Do you guys remember that millionaire guy? And then people would write into him and say like, you know, like it's so hot in our house and we don't have money to buy a fan. And he'd be like, I'm sending you 10 fans. And you know, anyway, do you guys remember that? Oh my God, I loved that millionaire guy. But anyway. Oh, and then in Indianapolis, I don't know if other places have this, but in the Indianapolis Star, which is our local newspaper, back in the day, it was called, my mom loved it. It was called like Shout It Out or Let It Out or something like that. And people could just write in anonymously. It's kind of like today's like Next Door or whatever that's called. But it was like in the paper. And so somebody could write in and they could write in something like, I'm really sad that, you know, the Shoney's breakfast bar on 86th Street closed down. Or they could say, whoever's leaving their dog turds in the yard, you know, but it would be like real funny like that. But anyway, so I'm kind of doing an Ask Peter thing. So you guys can ask me questions in the comment section. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, direct message me on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, you can email me. My email is listed below, and I will be reading all the questions anonymously and then responding to them. So I'm real excited about that. But I thought that we would start the month of May off with some meditations. Are you guys ready? All right, let's look in. So I haven't looked at either of these books, you know, in almost 2 weeks. So I think it's been like 10 or 11 days since I filmed a video over here. All right, let's look at Today is May 6th. Let's see what the meditation is for today, and then we'll go back. Feeling good. I do feel good. For those of you that do not know, I have been going through it, trying to pass this kidney stone, and I believe that I finally passed it. I have imaging on Thursday, so we'll find out definitively then. But I feel really, really good, and today I woke up good. So maybe that would be a good meditation to read. Let's go back and look at some of the other ones. And this is in Melody Beatty's The Language of Letting Go, which is a sister book to Codependent No More. Okay. Control, freedom from compulsive disorders, freedom from self-seeking, our higher power, recovery prayer. That's all the ones for May. You know what I want to read? Let's read freedom from self-seeking. That might be a good one to start. Freedom from self-seeking, May 3rd. Please free my thinking of self-will, self-seeking, dishonesty, and wrong motives. Paraphrased from Alcoholics Anonymous. There is a difference between owning our power to take care of ourselves as part of God's will for our life and self-will. There is a difference between self-care and self-seeking, and our behaviors are not as much subject to criticism as are the motives underlying them. Wow. There is a harmonic, gentle, timely feeling to owning our power, to self-care, and to acts with healthy motives that are not present in self-will and self-seeking. We will learn discernment, but we will not always know the difference. Sometimes we will feel guilty and anxious with no need. We may be surprised at the loving way God wants us, or the universe, wants us to treat ourselves. We can trust that self-care is always appropriate. We want to be free of self-will and self-seeking, but we are always free to take care of ourselves. God, please guide my motives today and help me on your path. Help me love myself and others too. Help me understand that more often than not, those two ideas are connected. Interesting meditation. I think, it's bringing up a lot of recovery stuff in here. And one of the things that we talk about in recovery is self-will run riot. And basically what that is just the self-seeking. It's just constantly like when what our will is, what we want, okay? And I'm not talking about what's best for us. I'm talking about our desires, our wants. And that can be something that's not healthy for us, or it can be something that is healthy for us. But sometimes we don't know the difference between that, right? And so we just become full of self-will. And we talk about that in recovery. We also talk about that the root of our disease is centered in selfishness and self-centeredness. And selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking are all kind of in the same realm, right? That they all come from self. Those are not necessarily self-care. Self-care, I think, is taking care of ourselves so that we can be better people to ourselves, that we feel at peace and harmony in the world, and that we are better balanced for other people that we're interacting with, so that we are coming to other people in peaceful, serene ways, and that we're not being disruptive and chaotic to other people. And that's something that I had to really, really learn through the years, And so I have to ask myself, like, when you talk about setting boundaries, like, is this boundary a healthy boundary for me to set? Is this self-seeking? Is this self-care? Am I just like, is there a rudeness in my attitude or whatever? And one of the easiest ways to do that is asking yourself the question, what's your motive? And that's something since day one that I got sober, that any sponsor that I've ever worked with in recovery, a lot of my friends will say, it's a common question you ask in recovery, like, what are your motives? And I can remember in early recovery, that question was asked a lot about, like, I would say, like, big topic issues. Like, if you were going to make a big decision, or you were going to, break up with somebody, or you wanted to get in a relationship with somebody, or you were going to move, or start a new job, or quit a job, or whatever you were going to do, or confront somebody, I think the question I would always be asked is, what's your motive behind it? Sincerely, purely, what is your motive? Is your motive that you need to set a healthy boundary and then move on? Is your boundary that you just are not happy in the situation that you're in anymore? Or is your, motive that of desire or love? Like, what is your motive in that situation? And I've had that conversation with my sponsors through the years, many, many times, where after, and having that conversation and saying, like, what's your motive in this? I can tell you from various different things. Now, today, it's a question that I ask myself on a regular basis. Like, okay, for example, this is going to sound silly, but as an example, I have been kind of feeding out the idea that I'm thinking about maybe starting another channel, which I said I would never do, and calling it something like, I don't know, something to do with nature. And then I would just do, like, trail cams of, like, the birds, eating from the bird feeders, and, the bunnies in the yard, and the squirrels and stuff like that. And so, like, that would be something where I would say, what's your motive about that? And if my motive is, because that's something I really enjoy in the moment, and I'm really passionate about it, and I think it would bring me happiness, that happiness aligns with the peace that I am trying to achieve in my life. Not just that the birds and the nature bring me peace, but pursuing that would make me happy. Pursuing that would bring me joy, pure joy, okay? Not vindictive joy, not hateful joy, not egotistic, arrogant joy, which I think often if we really look at the decisions we've made in our life, if you take a certain job, if you say, oh, I'm going to take this job, a lot of times when, whatever decisions I made, opportunities, and talking to my sponsor or friends, they'll say, well, what's your motive in that? And if your motive is, well, I just want people to know that I can, then that's really more about ego and pride. It's really not about enjoying that job. I think a lot of people take jobs because of the title of the job, but then they find out they don't really enjoy the job, And then there's a lot of people that take the job and they really enjoy the job, so it just depends. It's a personal question. But for, like, example, like that one of, like, building the yard and, doing all that kind of stuff, that aligns with my peace and my happiness right now. So then my motive would be to make myself happy, to hopefully make other people happy, and to bring myself and other people joy and peace and serenity. And I think that's a pretty pure motive, And so You know, and even in thinking about having conversations with friends of mine or, you know, bringing up things, you know, with my husband or friends or whatever, I always ask myself, like, what's my motive? Is there a need for me to do this? Like, do I feel like this is a need I have? Like, does it need to be spoken? Or is this something that I can maybe let go and process on my own? Also, a question I have to ask myself when we talk about self-seeking is this about me or is this about how my feelings? Am I in my feelings too much? Like, I have to withdraw myself from it and ask myself, where is this self-seeking in this? What is truly my motive for my action right now? And only when my motive is pure, today, most of the time when I check on it, most of the time, today only, and I'll sit back. You know, I've talked a lot on here about being reactionary versus being responsive. Today, I am not that reactionary. I'm pretty responsive in my life today. And what that means is reactionary, I used to always use this example, is like, you know, if somebody hits you on your shoulder, you're like, ouch, and you hit them back. That's reactionary, you know, where if somebody says something, you say something right back. Responsive to me today is where you kind of take in all the information. I had a supervisor like this. She's the one that taught me this, but it didn't set in until years and years later. But she kind of take in all the information, then she would make a decision, and then she would speak to it. That's who I hope to be today. That's who I hope to be today. And I try to be that person, you know? But all of that has to be considered in what's my motive? Does this need to be spoken on? Do I need to make this action? And that can be whether or not I want to go out to dinner with somebody or I want to start an 8th channel, you know? I mean, it can be all of those different things, you know? Confrontation with somebody or buying a gift for somebody. I mean, it can be all realms of things. I think asking yourself, what is my motive in this moment is a very, very valuable question. And whenever I've asked myself that or had that conversation with other people, I've really never been led wrong, you know? And like I said, I've had that conversation. I think I'm just going to read this meditation today. But I've had that conversation with, you know, so many sponsors and friends of mine in recovery, people not in recovery. My husband and I will have that conversation, you know. He'll say, what's your motive? Or I'll ask him, what's your motive in this situation when we're just talking about life events and whatever. And many times they'll be like, yeah, my motive is pure. Like, I'm going to go through with this. Other times, you know, if my motive is not pure, and what I mean by that is that there's self-seeking in it, that there's selfishness in it, that there's vindictiveness or revenge or nastiness in it or hurt feelings, then maybe that's something that I need to wait on. Maybe that's something that I need to ask myself in a week, what are your motives? And if my motives haven't changed, then maybe it's not something that I need to engage in, you know? And so that's why it's important for me to inventory those things. And sometimes inventory for me is just putting down a piece of paper, what is your motive, you know? Like if you're thinking about taking a job, ask yourself, what are my motives for this job? Is it financial? Well, that's not, I mean, that could be selfish, but not necessarily. Do you need more money, you know? I mean, some people, most of us do, but a lot of people, some people don't, you know? So is this job going to take more time away from your family and your kids and your friends? And you don't really, it's a, you know, a parallel change. You're not going to make any more money, but it's going to cost you a lot more time. But that title, well, that title means a lot because then people are going to be like, ooh, they're going to look at you in a different way. But what's your motive? If your motive is about how people are going to look at you, is that motive as important as spending time with your friends and your family or even taking care of yourself? So that's a way that you could kind of inventory a situation like that. But an inventory is not this deep process. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Like with a 4-step inventory it is. But you can just, an inventory can just be a pros con list, you know, that you write down. Or just asking yourself a simple question sitting in a chair, you know? Or asking yourself on the way home from work, what's my motive about this, you know? And typically, if you ask yourself that question, you won't be led wrong. You know, years ago, I had somebody say, we all know what our issues are. We all know what our truth is. We all do, you know? And so if you ask yourself, what's my truth? What's my truth, okay? Not truth of a story, but what's my feelings? My truth means, how am I feeling about this? What is my motive? Why am I doing this right now, you know? And that's my truth. And so when I'm having that conversation with myself, I know if I'm acting out of pure nature or if I'm not, you know? When I act out of pure, when I act in contrast to pure nature, it doesn't usually go the way that I want it to. When I act purely from my heart and genuinely and authentically to who I am inside, it usually turns out sometimes, not always, but sometimes I think the way that it's supposed to. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys and I will see you in my next video. Bye.